Hi, everyone. So today I'm sitting at the wine shop, which is in Loresho in Nairobi, Kenya. And I'm going to be talking to a lovely lady who runs this place. And one thing that would make you know that she's doing a really good job is you never get parking. Okay, you do. They've expanded the parking. But the food is always top notch. And if you've been or spoken to anybody in the restaurant industry, you know that that's not an easy thing to achieve. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to introduce you to my guest today, Soraiya. Hello.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm good.
I'm very happy that you're having a glass of wine.
Oh, yeah. I'm loving this wine right now.
So, the wine shop, before we start talking about it, just introduce yourself. How do you generally introduce yourself?
My name is Soraya. First, I'm a wine lover. Secondly, by qualification, I'm now a sommelier as well. I'm a WSET level 3 sommelier. Not known to many people, but it is actually a profession. Drinking wine, you can get paid for it. But yeah, it's a process. My journey actually started with a pregnancy, my first child's pregnancy. And it's interesting how wine has evolved along with my children. I know those are quite contradictory facts, but my sense of smell really got developed when I was pregnant
Oh,
with my
wow.
first child. And I was that woman hurling, throwing up in every bucket, in every toilet. And it paid off in the end because it stayed. And that really awakened my wine journey.
So wait a minute. So before this, your sense of smell was just normal, like the rest of us.
Yeah.
And then after your first pregnancy,
It went haywire. And I remember this very distinctly because I was working at the UN and I used to use that bathroom every single day. And that day, I literally threw up all over the floor. And I'm like, whoa, what's going on here? And it was my sense of smell. It was super heightened. And it stayed with me even after the pregnancy. And we were doing this wine business, I don't know if you remember, on Gong Road almost 12 years ago.
yes, I think I visited your shop 12
Yeah.
years ago.
And I was just like everybody else. I didn't know much about wine. I was drinking overly cheap wine out of a box and not, I was abusing it and not really enjoying it or understanding it. And I didn't like the feeling of being put on the spot because wine can be quite pretentious. And I'd have a couple shishi bougie customers come and put me on the spot. And I was like, I don't like that. They're asking me questions. I don't know the answer. And wine can be very intimidating and it can make you feel quite small. And I was like, look, I need to up my game here. If this is what I'm going to be doing as a business, I want to educate myself. And so I just started reading and I started learning and I started watching videos and I started Googling and I started tasting. And I think that's the most important thing. I really started to taste what I was experiencing and what I was around all the time. And that's when I realized that my sense of smell and my sense of taste was still very heightened after the pregnancy.
So let me ask you, let me take you back a little bit. So you started the wine business before any of this happened, while you were still working at the UN.
I'd left the UN.
You'd left the UN.
And my dad and my aunt have been running a wine business in Kampala for almost 40 years. And my dad was like, why don't you take a stab at it in Kenya? And I was like, no, I don't know anything about wine. I cannot do this. He's like, you can do it. And I'm like, no. And he was literally like, you know, when you throw someone into the deep end?
Yeah.
He's like, you'll figure it out. And I got to give him credit for that because I did figure it out.
That's interesting for me because I thought that the wine industry, or rather the taste for wine, is more established here than in Kampala.
So it is, but they had started that business and it was already planted there. The seed was planted there. So we then decided, let's bring the market here for that exact reason. That there's more curiosity here, there's disposable income. People were starting to get into the wine game. It wasn't fully established, but they were curious about it. So that's why we said, let's start it in Kenya as well.
So basically, wine happened to you.
Wine
And you-
happened to me in a big way.
Okay, okay. So take me back to the initial shop that you had. You said that was 12 years ago. How did you transition to this lovely place?
So I think the market helped. The Kenyan market and the Kenyan palate helped. Like 10, 12 years ago, we could not be doing what we're doing right now. The market was not ready for it. They were a very young drinking market. It still is, but pockets are developing and curiosity is developing. I think how we started organically was the perfect way. We had the little shop, we had a little restaurant, we would do wine tastings, we would do wine events, and there was curiosity, and people were coming and they were experimenting with it, and it was becoming trendy, right? Like wine was developing as a category. I mean, beer and spirits is huge, cocktails is huge, but wine was starting to inch its way through to palates, and people were getting curious. And I think there's something to be said about like upping your game and upping your sophistication level. And I think people were tapping into that lifestyle. And again, like the beautiful thing about Kenyans is they didn't care if it was pretentious. They didn't care if it was they were drinking overly sweet wine or, you know, whatever. They were like, so what? I'm drinking it. All right. And let's go. What's the next step? So I appreciate the market for that because you can get very intimidated and then you can leave it. And then you go to what you're comfortable with, which is a beer or a cocktail or a whiskey, because that's big here. But they were like, no, let's figure out this wine thing. And I think through like events, tastings, just constant exploration, that's how wine developed itself at the table of beverages here.
So those days, how much was it to taste wine? Because even now, it's not particularly cheap.
It's not particularly cheap.
But how did you price it then? Like how did?
Oh, we were giving it away like for free at that point. We were like, come taste. I think the cheapest wine tasting was like 1.5, and then it went to 2.5.
Ooh.
So it's still sitting around like 4.5, 5.5. It's not like reached astronomical levels. But the good thing is people are drinking better. They're upgrading themselves. They're willing to spend 5, 6, 10,000 shillings on a bottle of wine, which is impressive because that's what you're doing internationally. So the fact that we're doing it here in Kenya is impressive, and it shows that there is scope and room for more, which is great.
So the wine shop here in Loresho.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to put that together as a plan? I mean, this is a beautiful location. It looks like it's been here for quite some time. Just tell us a little bit about the shop.
I mean, do you believe in manifestation?
Of course.
Okay, so this is a manifest baby. I literally, my brother and I, like, we manifested this. So I think the stars really aligned for us during COVID. So there was a lot of positives that came out of, okay, I wouldn't say a lot, but this is definitely a positive COVID story. So we moved here 4 months before COVID started. And we had been to South Africa, I'd been to France, I'd been to all these places, and there was all these beautiful manor houses and then these vineyards and these tasting rooms. And I was like, oh my God, why can't we have something like this in Kenya? We have the perfect weather. People love sitting outside. And I don't know if you remember back in the day, restaurants were outside.
Yeah.
They were not in malls, they were not in office buildings. Like you would sit in an old house with a garden and you'd be happy. And I'm like, why aren't we going back to that? And COVID really helped that because you remember the days of social distancing, of masking and hand sanitizer. You couldn't be X next to somebody. So it worked because this is completely social distancing. And we were like, okay, it was rough for the first couple months because there was crazy restrictions and we couldn't open and we couldn't serve and whatever. But then people really appreciated the fact that there was social distancing here. And so it worked. It picked up. And then people were also depressed, so they were drinking a lot. That was also a bonus.
I can see that.
I mean, recordly, statistically, champagne sales were the highest ever during COVID.
Wow.
Yeah. Champagne, not even wine, champagne.
I think people had sort of like come face to face with death. And so because of that, you feel like, okay, I need to stretch out my life and enjoy myself as much as possible. Because I think that's when there was actually a boom in Nairobi for all these new restaurants where people are just trying to live their dream. And there you are, you're already starting to live your dream.
Yeah.
With this place.
And so it was a lot of manifestation. It was a lot of like vision boarding. It was like, okay, this is what we want. How can we replicate it? It was a lot of taking risks and a chance. And then, COVID was a silver lining because it made sense. Like people were dying to go somewhere where they could sit outside and have a glass of wine and just meet another person. Like we would have people when it was like that crazy restriction, you couldn't open it all. I think the first 4 months you couldn't open it all. They would, and it was just takeaway.
Yeah.
They would come just to talk to me. Like they just wanted to get out of the house and talk to another human. Like humans need humans. And so they would come. I remember I was like, okay, I need to learn a skill here because like I'm gonna go crazy. So I started baking. I made cookies, and people would come. Anybody who bought wine for takeaway, I would give them a cookie. And
I never
then,
got cookies. Okay, but I didn't order wine. I ordered your soup. I
yeah,
think
you're not
I
getting
remember.
a cookie if you order soup. But they got so popular that they started coming for the cookies. I'm
No
like, you
way.
need to buy wine. And then that's when I realized like humans need humans. We need that connection. Like we can't survive as a race without that connection. And so that kind of made them discover this place. And then when they realized that there was all those social distancing measures in place, they're like, this is a cool spot. We don't want to go sit in a mall. We don't want to wear our masks and be shut in an indoor space. We want to sit outside. And so organically it grew, it grew, it grew. And then when they started realizing that there's food, that was a game changer too.
Okay. So how old is this building?
So-
This particular establishment?
So this particular house is almost 90 years old.
Whoa.
And again, I go back to manifestation because when I was looking for the place after Gong Road, I mean, I was terrified. I was like, no, I can't leave Gong Road. Like, Brew was
Walk-in
upstairs.
traffic,
Yeah,
yeah.
we had walk-in traffic. That's all we knew. That was our comfort zone. And my brother's like, no, we need change. I'm like, no, we can't. We need to stay here. And no one knew about COVID then. Nobody knew what was going to happen. And can you imagine if we were in that small place during COVID? We wouldn't have survived.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have survived. Plus, they were doing Gong Road, the construction of the road. Do you remember that nightmare?
Yes.
Do you remember those images of those Range Rovers in the ditch? We wouldn't have
Probably
survived
not
that.
as much as you.
So basically, we came here and it was a risk. And we said, okay, let's start. And we started, initially, we only did cheese boards and cold cuts. And then people are like, we're hungry. As in, we were not selling the high-end wines or the expensive like Cabernets or Malbecs. And we're like, what's going on here? And people are like, we're hungry. We can't just eat cheese and bread. Like, we need food. If you give us food, we're going to stay and we're going to drink. And we were like, no, we're not running another restaurant again. Because we had just come out of Brew. We had come out of, like, running those nightclubs. I'm like, dude, I'm not doing another restaurant.
Yeah.
And then I was like, but we have to almost because people need sustenance. And so the moment we started adding things organically to the menu that paired with the wine, like the salmon goes for the Sauvignon Blanc, the steak goes for the Malbec, we started building up a menu organically. And we started selling more wine. And then people were staying longer and they were eating more. And then the spend per person was going up. You got to read into your market and you got to really listen to what your consumers want. And if you're able to give it to them, then you have a good solution.
So apart from manifestation and what you said about growing out of, your brother encouraging you to grow out of what you already knew, what are some of the personal things you can say you learned from this experience of moving from Gong Road to here?
So I think really pushing yourself and stepping out of your comfort zone, no matter how scary it is vital. You need growth. So like how they say that change can be stifling, I really believe that. I think that even if you don't know where you're going or where you're heading, but you have that core concept of, okay, you're going to do the work and you're going to commit to it, I think you can make it happen. And I truly believe if you truly manifest it, if you truly believe that this is where you want to go, even if you don't know it yet, you will get there. It takes some work, it takes some commitment, but I think staying comfortable just because it's comfortable is not a way to go, because eventually that comfort will turn into boredom and then you don't push yourself, and you need to constantly keep pushing yourself, even if it's uncomfortable initially, because it takes you to better places.
But even if you did manifest, and a lot of it, I do believe in it. I just want to look at the other side of things. So there was, of course, some market research done. How did you? What are the basics that you need? Let's say anybody in business needs to know before taking such a huge leap.
So I think really understanding your demographic market is crucial. You really need to understand and tap into what your consumer wants. And I think there's some core principles that are applicable to all businesses, and that's like customer service delivery and speed and convenience. Like that's another thing. During COVID, if you look at Uber or Bolt or Glovo, I mean, look how much they flourished, those businesses. They were just starting in this market. But how did they do? because Kenyans adapted to that. And again, it was about service delivery, convenience, and good customer service. I think those are some of the really core tenets that you need for a business. And I think there's something to be said about like the owners or the top guys being very in touch and having a pulse on their business. Because if you just delegate and leave it, I don't think you can get a real taste of what you're looking into, like what your consumers want. Like, you know me, I'm here all the time. I
Yeah.
talk to all my customers. I learn stuff from them all the time. They'll be like, oh, Soraya, we want this. We like this. Or why are you doing this? Or how come you haven't done this? And you got to listen to that because that's your consumer. If you can please them and keep them happy, then you got them. And that you can only go up from there. But it's a sacrifice.
Yeah.
It's time. It's consistency is so important. Like just showing up in anything. Like even when you work out, you show up. You're
Yeah.
tired, whatever, you're sick, you're whatever, you show up. If you show up consistently every single day, I think there's something to be said about building that strong foundation.
So, from a personal point of view, to overcome some of the challenges, showing up was a big thing for you.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that sort of surprise you about this place in a good way and a bad way?
So I think the power of people has been something that surprised me in a good way. I feel like being in a neighborhood environment, I'm amazed at how 80% of my clientele are literally neighbors that are walking distance from here. So the way that they've supported small businesses and the way that they've like protected this space and taken it as their own has been a really pleasant surprise. Because you know how it can go the other way. Neighbors can be pissed. They can be angry. This is an alcohol-based business. They can be like, what the hell are you doing in my hood? Get out. And once you piss them off, you're done. So I think that was a pleasant surprise. It was a risk, but it was a pleasant surprise. And I've also tried to work really well with them. Like, you know, I don't open on Sundays. I close the kitchen early. I close the bar early. These are all sacrifices to the business, but in the long run, they've paid off because I've kept my core consumer base happy with following what I'm doing for them. I think some of the hard things have been, I mean, I'm going to be blunt and say it, the government. I mean, taxes on wine is ridiculous. The barriers and loopholes to this particular product is very tough. Like, they don't make it easy. It's not easy. There's constantly new rules, there's constantly new taxes, there's constantly new roadblocks, and it's never a straight road. You get a little bit far, you go 10 steps back. And any importer would tell you that. Anybody in this space will tell you that that's probably the biggest headache. And instead of growing this market, it feels like they're trying to shrink it, which is frustrating.
You talked about importation there. One thing that I wanted to, one thing I've noticed, and I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of wine importers in Kenya are female. Is there any reason for that? Like, why do you think?
I think one, it's what they drink. So I feel like a lot of the males are whiskey-based, beer-based, spirits-based. I feel like wine, as cliche as it is still very much a woman's drink. And I feel like the women have really taken over this space because they're passionate about it. It's something that they're comfortable with. It's something that they choose to drink. And so it's just a natural progression to go towards something that's already in your comfort zone. It's a lot easier as well in terms of if I brought a beer guy or a spirits guy here, I mean, they're probably dealing with another level of frustration in terms of taxation and roadblocks and all of that. So wine's probably a little bit kinder in that space.
Okay. Okay. So you said earlier that you are a sommelier, level 3?
Yeah.
Just say that. How is it said?
So it said WSET, which is the Wines and Spirit Trust Education Fund from the UK. It's a internationally recognized accreditation. So WSET level 3, there's 5 levels ultimately. There's level 1, which literally anybody could do if you had a bit of imagination and went online. Level 2 is a little bit more of a commitment. Level 3 is the game changer. It separates, I guess, the boys and the men, or the girls and the women, whichever way is neutrally balanced. Level 3, statistically, people who do that exam, 50% fail the first time.
50% fail.
Yeah.
Level 3?
It's a 50% fail rate. That's
Wow.
how hard it is.
So is that where your nose came in, or it's going to come in when you go for level 4?
No, my nose came in level 2.
But how long did that take you to get to this level? And
So
and are you planning to progress?
yeah, so level 2 was pretty easy, and there's some instrumental women in the industry already that really pushed me towards that, and I thank them for that because they're like, look, you've got something good, but you got to actually put it to paper and you got to get some credit for it. And so they helped me navigate this space. And so level 2 was a multiple choice, sort of, you get a textbook, you study. So that one probably took me about 6 months to do. Can be done in much easier times, but I was also with children and dealing with the setting up a business. So it took me about 6 months. And then level 3, I did it during COVID. So that was a lot harder in retrospect because you're actually supposed to fly to either South Africa or the UK to study for level 3. And you get taught.
Why is that?
Because you have to taste the wines. And so it covers the world globally of wines, and you have to taste the wines, and you're supposed to be taught by master sommeliers and very serious wine people. So you're actually paying for their experience. Now, during COVID, you're not doing that. You're doing it online. And we got all of our wines the day before the exam. So we're literally tasting like 80 wines the night before the exam. And it was supposed to be spread over a month. So that was a bit of a rough one. But in a way, again, silver lining, I didn't have to leave my children. I didn't have to leave my business. I could do it from here. So as much as it was harder and I didn't get that knowledge from the actual wine master, which I would have loved to get, our teacher was really awesome, and he was able to convey that information to us online. Time. It's a commitment. You got to find time to like sit down and study, and that is a mammoth book. Like it's a textbook of all the world's wine. So you got to know history, geography, physics. Like this is the fun part, the tasting. There's actually the studying, which is the really hard part. So it's 4 25-mark answer questions, written answer questions, and there's 50 multiple choice questions, and then there's the tasting element, which everybody neglects because they're like, oh, it's tasting, it's easy.
That's where
That's
the
actually
fail
the
comes
harder
in.
part. The fail comes in there because you just take it for granted.
So, I literally watched you taste, I don't know how many different types of wine when you were part of the first Kenyan team, all females, to actually go for the wine tasting global competition in France.
Yeah.
So, I mean, all of those textbooks that you're talking about, how did they come together to put you in that position to actually qualify and excel when you get there?
So they really helped because they're the foundation, right? So they helped us understand the region. They understand like the technical part of the wine, which is where it's from, its terroir, its grapes, its history. And without that, there's no way we could have got to that level. We wouldn't have even qualified. Forget about it. So the text part and the studying part is a big part of that and what I do every day. Like wine is constantly about education and learning and continuous learning. Tasting is one part of it, and it's a very important part of it, but it's not everything. You need the knowledge and the tasting hand in hand to go far.
But let's say, for example, if you're talking about a region and you're talking about a specific grape, how does that translate to, for example, the bottle on the table right now? Like how do you make the connection between the two?
So that's where the books come in because, like, I'm tasting this particular wine, which is Little Eagle Sauvignon Blanc. It says coastal on the bottle. I can totally understand that because it is about the proximity to the ocean. It is about the salinity that I'm tasting and the minerality I'm tasting in this glass. It is about the pH level in the soil. I can understand all that because of what I studied in those books, and I can understand it from what I'm tasting on my palate. If I only had one or the other, it's like you need two hands to clap. And without one, you're completely lost with the other part. So you can be an excellent taster, but what are you tasting? And how do you describe it? And how do you internalize it and like make it part of your memory bank? You can't do that without the facts. So it's a lot of reading, and it's never done because this is what I was trying to tell you. After level 3, there's level 4, which is PhD level, diploma level, which is like a huge
Wow.
jump
Yeah.
from level 3. So level 2 to level 3 is a big jump. Level 3 to level 4 is like astronomical because you're going to PhD level. And then level 4 to level 5, which is Master of Wine, is like a space jump. Like that's a huge, huge jump. And there's only one woman of color who's a Master of Wine, and she's
Oh,
in India. So that really puts it in
really?
perspective. Yeah. There's
So
a handful that are women, but it's a very male, Western male dominated space.
that's very interesting, especially because you're talking about these jumps. So I know that you own a restaurant, and you have a very very wide selection of wines that you have here, and you managed to go for this global competition. But then if you're jumping from level 3 to level 4, what's the difference? Apart from just knowing, what can you do with that knowledge?
Yeah. So one, it's I think with any PhD person, it's a very personal thing. It's like you're doing it for yourself and to attain more knowledge, but it's personal. You're not doing it for any other sort of recognition. For me personally, it helps because I'm in the wine space. So this is my business. So it's a personal thing because I want to challenge myself and I want to delve deeper into the world of wine. And it's also going to help me because one, I'm going to edge out some of my competitors because I'm going to have that much more knowledge. Two, I'm going to be able to tap into a whole new realm of wine that I can then offer and share with my consumers. And my goal is to have my own school here. So I want to pass that knowledge down to Kenyans, whether they're waiters, whether they're in the F&B space, whether they're up and coming sommeliers. I think Kenya needs to get to the level of where South Africa is because we have all the parts. We just are missing that crucial part. And wine can be such a big asset in the tourism space as well.
That was going to be my next question. Like, why? Why would
Yeah.
it be important for us to get to that level? You know?
I mean, we have like the Mara, we have the beach, we have the beautiful settings, just like they have in Cape Town. And wine should be there at the table because these people are coming to enjoy all these beautiful spaces, but they need to be drinking good wine while they're doing it as well. And I feel like we have all the components, but we're lacking that service element, which is letting us down. We could go so much farther. I mean, you're charging ridiculous prices to go to the Mara and stay in this beautiful lodge, and then you have this waiter that doesn't know jack about wine. That really spoils the experience, right? Now imagine if he was equipped and he knew and he could upsell. That would make the experience almost complete. So it's something we should invest in.
I've never really thought of it that way because actually there's awesome places. When you start drinking wine, your palate develops almost without you paying attention. And so I know that there's some places I do not go to because I know they don't have a wide variety of
Yeah.
wine.
So they're also losing out from a business sense, right?
Yeah, but then it's in the same vein. I know that if you ask me to taste the wine and tell me whether I can, taste any
Salinity.
pH soil in it, I won't be able to. So I mean, what part of that is actually real, and what part of it is, brouhaha?
So that's the thing. So for the average consumer, you don't really need to taste the pH, but you want to be able to sit back and watch a beautiful sunset and feel really good, right? That's important to you. I think for people like us, it's important because we're able to sell, and everything is marketing, right? Everything's a story. And how do you get better at something is by improving and learning and getting every single thing you can out of this bottle, which is the story, which is the origins, which is everything. What do you eat it with? How do you serve it? So I think for the average consumer, it's a lot of hoo-ha, and it's impressive hoo-ha, so they buy into the story. And I think for people in the industry, it's actual real facts, and it comes down to like, okay, how can I get better? How can I improve myself? How can I be better than her or him? How can I jump a bit further? Where can I take this? And it's always finding out and carving out newer business opportunities.
So I think when you look at the numbers of importers before COVID and now, I mean, there's been a big jump. I think
Yeah.
you're the one who told me that we're at 80 now.
Yeah, we have a lot. A lot of them are just suitcase guys, but a lot of them are actually the real deal as well.
But now, how do you embrace the entirety of it? So recently there was the event at Shamba that had I don't
Yeah.
know how many types of wine from
From Italy.
from Italy.
Yeah. The
Do-
Gambella Rosso.
Yeah, Gambella. In fact, I think I subscribed to the newsletter. I'm like, what are these guys talking about? But could you tell me what you think about an event like that and what its implications are in the industry now, and how far we need to embrace all the different regions in one place?
So, I mean, I think it's first really impressive that the event was even here because it's an international event and it's showcasing Italian wines. And a lot of them are native Italian wines. So, stuff that even some of I had never tasted, right? And so it was an opportunity to meet people, to taste wines from the region and all over Italy that I would never get the chance to do unless I went and spent months and months in Italy and invested in visiting winemakers and vineyards. So it was a great chance to have a snapshot at stuff. It's a great chance for twofold. One, for the consumer to see that, look, Italy is such a vast region and there's some really good stuff. We should be drinking it here. Two, for importers to say there's an opportunity to meet people. Unless I went there myself to a show over there, I would not have met these importers. Now there's an opportunity for a business exchange where I can now import from some of these regions and then bring that wine here for the consumers to taste. So I think it's great, and we need more of these road shows. We need more of these countries to come because we are already drinking so many of the world's wines, right? And from 10 years ago to now, we're drinking much better stuff. So I think there's advantages in doing that, and there needs to be more. There needs to be more from other regions in the world. There needs to be support from these winemaking, and people are looking to this market now. Like that market over there is quite saturated. So now the world is looking here and being like, okay, how do we introduce our wines to an emerging market that's one, curious, that has disposable income, and that is now willing to actually spend and invest in wine. For them, it's a culture, right? Like they grew up, France, Italy, Spain, Portugal. These are like, they were born and there was like a finger of wine in their mouth. But for us, we're learning, right? And so we probably had a finger of beer in our mouth. But it's nice to know that they're actually looking outward and they're looking at us as an emerging market and they want to invest in us and they want to up the wine game, which is good.
I'm just wondering what the opportunities are for anybody now in this region who wants to get into wine.
So, look, there are positives and negatives in everything. There is a cash implication. You need to be able to be willing to part with some cash to start this importation business. You are willing to part with some sweat and frustration because it's not easy to get all the logistics done, to deal with SGS and God knows they sample everything. My suppliers always tell me Kenya is the worst in terms of like
No
what
way.
they ask for. It's like a chemistry experiment, what they ask for. Short of like flying over there and like interrogating the winemaker, that's what they need to know. So there's a lot of barriers to entrance. And I don't know why that is. I don't know if the government is protecting the alcohol space. I'm not quite sure. Like, it shouldn't be that difficult. And then that coupled with global shipping, which has been a disaster anyways.
Yeah.
Like, you heard about that thing that happened in the Red Sea.
Yeah.
When
the
the
Suez Canal was blocked.
Suez Canal was blocked, and then those Iranian or Yemenis guys had overtaken the shipping containers with drones. Do you know about all that?
No, I didn't know about the drones.
So apparently the I need to get the exact name. I've forgotten it. It slipped my mind. They hijacked shipping containers with alcohol and other goods with drones technology and basically paralyzed their ships. So there's 10 reputable shipping companies in the world and 7 of them refused to ship through that channel and went round the Cape of Good Hope in South Africa, which took a month longer. So that's demurrage, that's frustration, that's money. And so global shipping has become a disaster. There's no containers. After COVID, there's no containers.
They're homes now.
Yeah. You can't put anything in a container because there are none.
Wow.
So they are barriers to frustration. But I think anything that you're passionate about and you're willing to show up for and fight for, then it's worth doing.
So the wines that you have here, maybe you can talk about them a little bit. What are some of the regions? What are some of the standout wines? I know that there's some which are quite expensive. Touch on that a little bit.
So we started with a lot of sweet wine because the palate was skewed that way. and you can't knock sweet wine because that's what fills the containers. But then we were able to like dissect the market and see what do they like. And so South Africa obviously is like 60% of the market because one, the port is close, and two, it's just people are familiar. It's wine from the continent, so it's the one that's most asked for, whether it's from locals or whether it's from international tourists. They want to be drinking something from the continent. So I'd say South Africa in every segment is probably 50 to 60% of what people import and what people choose to drink. Then from there, there's an experimentation with new world wines because they're more palatable. So things from like Argentina, Chile, New Zealand, these are funner wines and easier to drink. So people are more approachable to them. And then there's the old world wines like France, Italy, Spain, Portugal, Germany. Those ones take a little bit more appreciation and a bit more awareness and knowledge. They tend to be a little bit more expensive as well.
Okay. I think Australia is also one that I found quite interesting. I didn't know much about that. And I think on my bucket list I put Georgia.
Yeah.
So I can go and get wine with my name on it.
Yeah. And it's a great wine drinking region.
Oh, it is. Have you been?
No.
No.
I
Okay.
want to go. That's
Do you have
my
a bucket
goal.
list? Do you
I
have a wine bucket list?
I have a wine bucket list.
Tell me about it.
So I've been to South Africa, I've been to France, I've been to Italy, I've been to Spain, I've been to Portugal. So I'm working my way through the map. But I try to, even when it's a family trip, I try to make sure that if there's a vineyard in sight, that I make the time to go and visit, or at least try wines from the region. I want to get to New Zealand and Australia. Those are on my bucket list. But again, there's no time limit. So I feel like this is something that can be a lifelong journey. It can be something that you do your whole life. And you can find ways to incorporate wine into it anytime.
Okay. Cool. I think we should cheers to that.
Yes.
Because
Cheers.
you can't work and not play.
It's a fine balance. And I think like with anything in life, you need to have balance. People always ask, like, how are you not an alcoholic? Especially when we were doing the competition, because you saw how much wine we were tasting.
Yes.
But I think when it becomes your work, you understand that fine boundary, and you need to know that there has to be a balance. You can enjoy wine, but don't abuse it, like anything in life. And if you have a deep respect and appreciation for it, I think that it's very hard for you to abuse it.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much for your time. Now I know I've been calling you Soraiya forever, but from today I'm gonna call you Soraiya.
It's okay, my dad calls me Soraiya too. It's like
But he should know.
tomato.